Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Rough Rider, where every week I talk writing, self-publishing, and living in a barely literate society. Today, I'm going to be introducing you to some of the major print-on-demand services available to you as a self-publishing author. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are 6 popular services that you can use if you are starting out with self-publishing your indie novel. Print-on-demand is really your best option as a self-publishing author. It means that your books get printed as they are purchased, so it allows for the printing of a single copy or a small number of copies, as opposed to having a stockpile of already printed books or a large inventory that is kept in a warehouse somewhere. And while as an indie author, it is okay to just start with just an ebook. A lot of people do that. 4 out of 5 books sold, though, are in print. So you do eventually want to get your indie novel out there in print if you're going to make it in this industry. Now, the first print-on-demand service available to you as a self-publishing author is KDP Print. Now, this is Amazon's print-on-demand service, and it is very popular among self-publishing authors. Books published through KDP Print will be distributed to Amazon, and with an expanded distribution option, can be sold at other retailers as well, although Amazon obviously is pretty much the biggest bookseller online at this point. You may already be using KDP as a way to self-publish your ebook, and if you have self-published an ebook through KDP, it is very simple to create and link a print version of your book to the ebook version you've already put out. Originally, KDP only had a paperback option, but it looks like recently they've added a hardcover format. This is still in beta, however, so I cannot attest to its functionality or quality. But ultimately, what makes KDP an attractive option for self-publishing authors is that it is a very cheap way to go, because it does not have startup fees the way other services do for setting up a new title or making revisions. So you can publish your book without having to spend a lot of money up front. Now, your second option for printing on demand as a self-publishing author would be IngramSpark. IngramSpark is the biggest book wholesaler in the world, and as such, it has become a very popular print-on-demand service for self-publishing authors. It is personally what I use. It has not treated me wrong in the past. Personally, I use IngramSpark to print my indie novels. I started with KDP and then moved over to IngramSpark a few years ago. Books self-published through IngramSpark are sold on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, and are available at over 40,000 libraries and bookstores. Using IngramSpark as a print-on-demand service is a good option if you want your book to be sold in physical stores. However, what you should keep in mind is that a bookstore will only sell your self-published printed-on-demand novel if there is a demand for it. The bookstore has to order copies of your novel, so they aren't just automatically distributed to brick and mortar bookstores like across the United States. The likelihood of a physical bookstore selling copies of your self-published novel through IngramSpark is really dependent on the pricing that you set and customer demand for that book. In my experience, the biggest advantage to using IngramSpark is that it has a higher quality print available to you than a service like KDP Print does. IngramSpark has been doing hardcover prints for a while now. It's not just a recent development like it is for KDP. And IngramSpark also gives you a lot of formatting options that are not available on KDP. Some examples would be different inks, different types of paper, way more trim sizes than are available for KDP. Really, you can customize your print book to a degree that you really cannot on another service like KDP. The downside to using IngramSpark as a print-on-demand service is that it is more expensive than something like KDP. There are startup costs associated with using IngramSpark. You do have to pay a revision fee anytime you want to revise files or upload new files for a given title, like changing the cover or making an edit to the cover or interior file of your book. You're going to be looking at paying around $25 per revision. And then there also are setup fees for making a new title, which I think are $25 to $50. Printing costs have also gone up since the start of the pandemic, so you really do have to set your listing price fairly high on IngramSpark to make any sort of notable royalties off of book sales. However, in the end, IngramSpark does offer a very high quality print that I think is uncommon among other print-on-demand services, so that is why I personally have chosen to go with them. However, it may not be the best option for everyone, especially dependent upon your budget. Now, your third option for a print-on-demand service would be Lulu. Books self-published through Lulu are sold on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Lulu's own bookstore, and at over 40,000 schools and retailers. Lulu prints paperback and hardcover trade books, as well as photo books, cookbooks, magazines, and comics. If you use Lulu for self-publishing your novel, you have a lot of formatting options available to you, just like IngramSpark. You have a large number of trim sizes you can choose from, cover finish, so it can be gloss or matte. Lulu also offers a free design guide with templates for building a book cover or interior files, which is a big help if you are formatting your book yourself. Lulu also allows you to buy copies of your book in bulk, so copies of 100 or more at a discount, which I have not seen on other print-on-demand services. So if you're looking to have an inventory of books available at home that you can distribute to reviewers or just anyone that you want, you can buy these at a discount through Lulu, which you cannot do on other platforms that I've seen. Lulu does have some startup costs with their print-on-demand service, so this is similar to IngramSpark and dissimilar from KDP. So it is not a free option, but their costs are very reasonable and do not seem to add up the same way that IngramSpark's costs do. Now, your fourth option for print-on-demand service would be BookBaby. A book self-published through BookBaby is sold on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Powell's Books, Books A Million, and more. The downside to using a service like BookBaby is that their print-on-demand package only comes available as an add-on to a purchase of 25 or more copies of your book. This means that you have to buy 25 or more copies of your book before you can even buy a print-on-demand package from BookBaby. So really, you'll be paying a lot more upfront for this before you can even start selling your print book. This means that you will be paying more upfront to self-publish through BookBaby than you would for some of the print-on-demand services that I've already mentioned. The cheapest print-on-demand package that I've seen on BookBaby is $99, and if you purchase that, then you are only able to sell your book on the BookBaby bookshop. The more expensive print-on-demand package is $399, and that allows you to sell on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other retailers. So really, BookBaby is kind of a pricey option and would not be my personal first choice for print on demand, especially if you're just starting out and don't have a large budget to work with. Now, a fifth option for you for print on demand service would be Blurb. Blurb prints books, but also prints magazines, wall art, and photo books. Books self-published through Blurb are sold on Amazon, the Blurb bookstore, and over 38,000 bookstores, libraries, and schools. Blurb also offers its own free software called Bookwrite, which lets you create your book with tutorials and design templates, which is a big help if you're doing this yourself. The downside to self-publishing through Blurb is that you have a very limited number of formats that you can choose from for your print book. So far as I can tell, books can only be sold in paperback format, and you only have 3 trim sizes to choose from. If you don't need any sort of special customization for your book or don't feel like it needs to have any sort of fancy formatting, then Blurb may be a good option for you. Now, your sixth option for a print-on-demand service as an indie author is Draft to Digital. Draft to Digital is a newer print-on-demand service that I honestly had not heard of before until I was actually doing research for this video. If you self-publish your book on Draft to Digital, it will be sold on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and other retailers. Draft to Digital's focus is mainly on ebooks, but they do sell print books as well. If you do choose to self-publish through Draft to Digital, they offer free templates and design guides to help you properly format the interior file and the cover file for your book, which is always helpful if you're doing it yourself. There are no upfront charges for setting up a title, which sets it apart from services like IngramSpark or Lulu. And the biggest plus for using Draft to Digital is that they have extremely generous royalty rates compared to other print-on-demand services. From what I saw, it looked like they were up to 45% of the list price, which is huge compared to something like IngramSpark, which has very high printing costs associated with it, and therefore the royalties tend to be very low unless you price your book really high and sort of unreasonably high for a lot of potential readers. So which print-on-demand service would I personally recommend? I do think that there is a reason that KDP Print tends to be so popular among self-publishing authors, and that's because it is such a cheap option. There are no startup fees, and if you have a very small budget to work with, then KDP is a great choice for you. In addition to their lack of startup fees, it also is very easy to use, and because it is Amazon's own print-on-demand service, it is very quick and easy to get your book ready and listed on Amazon for sale. However, IngramSpark, which is what I personally use, is more established than KDP, and even though there are certain upfront or startup costs associated with self-publishing through IngramSpark, the amount of formatting options that are available to you for using IngramSpark, for me at least, really outweigh the costs associated with it. Ultimately, I would go with whatever option best fits your budget at this time. And an important thing to remember is that you're not married to your print-on-demand service. If you choose one right now, you do not have to stick with it. So as your book sales increase and you have more money to work with and a bigger budget, you can always switch to a better or higher quality print-on-demand service and have them start producing your book instead of the one that you're using right now when you don't have as much money to work with. You still retain all of your rights as the author of this book. The copyright is yours, it is your intellectual property, and you can take it wherever you want and you can go to any print-on-demand service that you choose at any point in time. If you found this interesting or helpful and you want to read a little bit more about this, you can check out my blog. There's a link in the description below. Please like and subscribe, follow me on social media, and as always, thank you for watching. God bless.